is the methodology that was used was extensively discussed. We've also taken into consideration the method of rebasing the GDP. Again, then General will go into that. Now, again, for us, and do give much more details on the state's GDP, the National Planning Commission, currently, we are doing the state's computation GDP. Each state of the Federation is being looked into in their gap need assessment, and so far we have done pilot study for 6 states in the 6 geopolitical zones, and currently we are embarking on the remaining states. With these short remarks, so that our move, our drive towards Nigeria getting to the 20th biggest economy in the year 2020 is becoming clearer. We are getting there, we'll get there, and we'll do that with facts and figures. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Yuguda. I wish to recognize the presence of the Secretary to the National Planning Commission, Mr. Ntufam. You're welcome, sir. We also welcome the Chief Economic Advisor today, to Mr. President. He's also here with us. We're happy to have you around. It is now time to invite somebody I would like to call the chief celebrant of today, the Statistician General of the Federation, who will now give us all the figures, Dr. Yemi Kale.
The Coordinating Minister of the Economy, my Honorable Minister, National Planning, Honorable Ministers here present, and I think I'll just say all other protocols observed. Before I start, I think I want to acknowledge a very critical stakeholder in the entire process, as well as the process that has led to the development of statistics at MBS, and that is the central bank, which has not been acknowledged. I can say this categorically, that without the support of the central bank to MBS, the level of statistical development, and in particular the acting governor in particular, would be nowhere as much as, in fact, some people say that MBS would have closed down by now. That's the extent of support central bank has given us. I believe that if we do the right things at the right time and for the right reasons, Nigeria could be a great nation. The outline of my presentation is as follows. After a brief introduction, I would explain very briefly what GDP is and how it is calculated, as well as the concept of rebasing, rebenchmarking, the process that was taken, before I reveal the outcome and then conclude. But before I go into that, I want to say that what we are here today to present is the result of extensive work that's taken about 2 years to complete. And I know we kept changing release dates at least 3 times, and people kept asking, why we change these dates? We could never met our deadline. So it's a personal relief to me that we finally were able to meet our deadline. And the reason was very simple. We wanted to get these numbers right. So we had to keep going back to the drawing board and ensure that we check what we are doing. And that's why it kept going on for 2 years. While the rebasing and rebenchmarking of GDP is very important to ensure we have a regular read of our economic structure. To us at the Bureau of Statistics, it represents something a lot more. It represents a whole package of statistical reforms. And the rebasing is just one of the things we are doing to get our statistical infrastructure and to get our data right so we could measure better. But the question is, why do we need to get our statistics right? And this has been addressed by the CME and the Minister of National Planning. Why is accurate, reliable data and the correct application of that data so important? How does a domestic investor, the youth we want to turn into job providers, not a business, for example, in a laundromat or an internet cafe, without having and applying data correctly on population size across regions or household incomes across local governments and so on. Obviously, if you locate your laundromat or internet cafe in an area where each household has its own, say, washing machines or internet-enabled computers, or in a village or an area where people don't use or can't afford those services, then obviously the business will collapse very quickly. Our development partners that we have been working with want to come and assist in development. How do they know where to intervene, in what way, and what time, and in what magnitude, without having data and using it correctly and applying it correctly? Foreign direct investment, acknowledged as key for growth and development. And the international business community has been, especially since the global crisis, looking for new investment opportunities as they dry up in conventional markets. But they need information. They need data on where to invest and how. The general public, how does the general public rate their government without available data to correctly assess governance and accountability so as to engender useful public debate and inform public choices? How do we develop a blueprint for development? Sectoral plans, our national budget, policies, programs, projects, and monitor the effectiveness of strategic plans without data. To solve unemployment, for example, you need data on the number of people that are unemployed, what their skills, what their qualifications are, how many of them are getting into the market on a regular basis, and how many jobs have been created to absorb them before you can design policies and programs to resolve that problem. And at this junction, I want to digress very quickly to stress that it is important that we do not mix data with ideology. And I'm saying this on behalf of this hardworking staff at the Bureau of Statistics. I think we have to be a bit more objective, in particular in the way we apply our data. I will often read stories, and you hear things like, because 1 million people applied for a particular job, the fact that our data that says 18.9 million people are underemployed and unemployed is wrong. And the question is, aren't the 1,000 part of that 18.9 million that we said exist? I read one story once that said 872 million Nigerians without water supply. And the story went viral. And I was wondering, nobody bothered to ask, we are not up to 872 million people. But it went viral, kept repeated everywhere. This, as far as MBS is concerned, since we are the official source of data, is a cause of concern for us. One of the phrases I've gotten very used to is, it does not reflect, and I'm sure I've heard this many times, it does not reflect conditions on the ground. And I always ask, what are those conditions? If Mr. A goes to his local supermarket and the price of a commodity has gone up by 10%, and in Mr. B's location, it has gone up by 5%. Sorry, 5%. And we report that the average inflation is 7.5% if we use both of them. Mr. A, who experienced 10% in his own area, says the data